loads to talk about, and I make no apology from the fact that this is going to be 100% an anti-Keir Starmer day. This man does not know what he's damn well doing. This shocking story that came out overnight, that in their quest to be, you know, seen to do the right thing for people's rights, human rights, that there was a chance that people, for example, Gerry Adams, the leader of Sinn Féin, could receive compensation payments from you, the British taxpayer, for the time he spent under arrest whilst we were discovering whether he was anything to do with the IRA atrocities and bombing in the 80s and the 90s. Last year, Sir Keir's government laid an order in Parliament, right, saying you can't, you know, we're worried about people's human rights. We're worried about doing the right thing. This man, right, yet again proves that he doesn't know what time of day it is, because he's just come out and said, I do want to block compensation for Gerry Adams. You've got me all wrong, like that. Like earlier in the week, do you support Rachel Reeves? And then yes, I do. He doesn't do anything correctly. You know the Chos Islands that we're apparently giving away, along with £9 billion to Mauritius, despite the fact that it's a very important place and there's a strategic place there for our military and the Americans. Trump raging. He's been saying for months, hasn't he, with his stupid sidekick David Lammy, we're going to give away the Chos Islands. Let's make friends of Mauritius. Let's give them £9 billion while screwing the pensioners. Today, old Mr. Turn It Round has decided I'm going to ditch temps to get it done before Trump arrives, because Trump could get quite angry with me and then there might be tariffs and he might screw our trade deal. Called it wrong again, you big chump. What about the fact that this stupid government wanted to deny free speech at universities? Today, Bridget Phillipson has revived speech laws after backlash from academics and students. I ask you this afternoon on Talk Drive. Is there one thing that this government, that this idiot has got right? Yesterday, the corruption minister had to resign because, oh yes, she's being investigated for corruption in her native Bangladesh. 2 months ago, the transport secretary who gave away millions of pounds out of your taxpayer pocket to train drivers who are still on strike had to go because she, and I quote, had lied to an insurance company over a mobile phone. This man is utterly incapable of governing this country. 0344 499 1000. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Right, you can make a call to Jodie, you can get your call on the show, you can do a WhatsApp and leave a voice note for our wonderful Ryan, or you can send a text, 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Delighted, by the way, to start this afternoon. Good friend of mine, good friend of the station's, former MEP and Brexiteer, Ben Habib. Good afternoon for Wednesday.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. Good to see you.
I'd like to apologise, because apparently you thought you were on at 4 and we thought you were on at 6 o'clock. So I'm sorry for putting you on right now, but I hope you understand. Is everything all right with you?
No, absolutely, 100%. I hope that wasn't my error.
Oh, look, Ava says, I'm watching you on YouTube. Does everyone miss me? Yes, we all do, Aves. Right, Ben, can you just explain in your dulcet tones this? I mean, I know he's backtracked, but Sir Keir Starmer wanted to bring in legislation to basically help victims, well, human rights indiscretions. For example, it came to our knowledge today that Gerry Adams, who was the leader of Sinn Féin, was held in custody for a while, some years back, whilst it was worked out whether he was, in fact, part of the IRA. There is now a chance, or there was until half an hour, where flip-flop Starmer was at it again. He could have got compensation. Is that right?
So last year, the Conservative government brought in something called the Legacy Act, which basically prohibited the prosecution of terrorists and soldiers. So it doesn't seem to apply to soldiers in a practical sense, because there are some cases still going through. But the idea was to draw a line underneath prosecutions. And as part of that, there was a specific exclusion for any compensation that someone like Gerry Adams may be able to claim from the British government, because he had been wrongfully detained. And the argument goes that it wasn't the Secretary of State that gave the order to detain him, it was another minister, and therefore he should have a right to make a claim for being falsely detained. And so there were specific provisions that the Conservative Party put in their act last year to make sure he couldn't make a claim. And I think it would have bound another 400 or so terrorists who would have otherwise been able to make claims against the government. And Keir Starmer, in his wisdom, has decided to revoke the specific clauses in that act that prohibited people like Jerry Adams and others claiming against the British government. So we would have the ridiculous situation where victims of the IRA, who've never had compensation, by the way, would not get any compensation. Soldiers continue to get prosecuted for doing their job, defending Queen and country as it was at the time. And people like Jerry Adams, in the pursuit of this nonsense human rights claim, would have a right to damages against...
Right, so leave that there, because anybody with a brain cell would go, are you joking? What is wrong with you? This morning on Mike's amazing Morning Glory breakfast show, just before the end of the show, there was a voice note sent to the team from an Andy in Portsmouth, and I want everybody on Drive to just listen to the anger in this man's voice and why, and then we'll speak to you again, Ben. Play it, please, Ames.
I myself never served in the forces, but my good friend and next-door neighbour did, and he was in the Royal Marines, and he played for the band. And in 1989, when the IRA detonated a bomb and killed 11 of his friends and colleagues and injured 20-odd others, he's now left on the shelf, PTSD, alcoholism, and he's basically got nothing. And Starmer wants to start giving money to Jerry Adams. I tell you what, Mike, it makes my bloody blood boil. It really does.
Ben, you would have to understand the emotion in that man's voice. A Marine
I do.
Fighting for our country sees 11 of his mates, his band members, his colleagues die from an IRA bomb. The man has PTSD, he's an alcoholic, he lives in sheltered housing, he has absolutely no help from his government while we're opening our doors to any bugger who arrives on a boat. And now, just to kick him even further in whatever he's got left, Jerry Adams could get it. So what happens? All of that happens. That all kicks off all day. And 20 minutes ago, Sir Keir Starmer has insisted, no, you've got me wrong. I do want to block compensation payments to Jerry Adams because you've all criticised me and I've seen sense. This man is an idiot. An idiot.
Well, I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased he's U-turned. And as you indicated earlier in the programme, he U-turned on the Chos Islands. He may yet try and do the Chos Island deal, of course, but he U-turned on trying to force it through before Trump became president. And this is the first time I think we've begun to see some U-turning going on by Starmer. So far, he's been absolutely stony-faced and brazen in driving through what I call his anti-British agenda, damaging our economy, damaging our social fabric, and so on and so forth. But we're beginning to see perhaps a weakening, a recognition that he's so unpopular, as Labour plummets in the polls, that he's taking on public pressure. So I'm actually encouraged. They will go on doing stupid things. They will go on doing things that are so self-evidently damaging to our interests. But at least they're beginning to feel the pressure of public opinion.
I get that, but I find myself a bit like the Tulip Sadiq yesterday. I mean, we didn't have you on yesterday, but yesterday, you couldn't write this rubbish, could you? The anti-corruption minister resigns finally after being propped up by her lefty mate because, and I quote, she's facing criminal charges for corruption in Bangladesh where her aunt was the PM. What I'd love to ask you, you've been at the coalface, right? He has spent 4 or 5 years trying to make the Labour Party electable. I suspect he only won because the Tories were completely unelectable, but you would think they would have picked better candidates and looked into their backgrounds. You think already Tulip Sadiq's gone, Louise Haig's gone, what was that woman who was Sue Gray's gone? Then you see things today like, you just said it. I'm delighted he's come out and said he won't, he will be blocking payments. But is he going to change his mind on pensioners? Is he going to change his mind on farmers? My question to you is, why is this man so bleedingly obvious, out of his depth and out of touch? Is there nobody whispering in his ear and saying, mate, you are not listening to what people want?
Yeah, I hope someone is whispering that in his ear. But, we do have a cabinet that is pretty blooming incompetent. If you look around the cabinet, not a shred of business experience, no idea about how the world works. And actually, and I'll just say it again, Jeremy, basically an anti-British sentiment. They're all Remainers. They all want to be governed from abroad. None of them understand the importance of borders. If you don't understand the importance of borders, of course, you don't really care about your military because, you know, who cares, right?
Yeah.
He's busy to the extent that we've got a military left. He's backtracked on his promise to increase military spending to 2.5% of GDP.
Of course he did.
And he's busy, I don't know if you see him shuttling backwards and forwards to Germany, talking about integrating our military with the European Defence Union. We don't want that. We don't want our military under the direction of Brussels. That would be another anti-British step that he would take.
Do you think in all of this, right? We'll talk about the Chagos Islands next, but do you think in all of this he's sitting there going, I've just got a 180 majority, I can do what I damn well want. When I look at the pictures on screen right now, he's beginning to look shattered and out of his depth. Rachel Thieves, or Richard III as we call her, she looks completely out of her depth. And you wonder, you think about the economic prosperity of this country, you think about our reputation in the world. Let's bring it to the Chagos Islands. He's apparently ditched his attempts to get his Chagos Islands deal signed before the Trumpster takes office next week. Downing Street has confirmed that the PM will not sign off on an agreement until the president-elect has looked it over. The Chagos Islands, used for our security, for America's security. Mauritius has never had an interest in it. How in the name of God do you imagine to stand up as the Prime Minister of a country that has and is experiencing so many difficulties and say, you know what, I'm giving away a sovereign bit of land which won't do anything for our security, and I'm also going to give the Mauritian government £9 billion whilst killing pensioners and screwing farmers. I don't get, Ben, how anybody imagines has got the front to try and sell that to the British people. Don't get it.
So, I mean, on the Chagos Islands, Chagos Islands are part of the British Indian Overseas Territories that I think were created, I may have the date slightly wrong, but in about 1836. And Mauritius was part of the British Indian Overseas Territories. But Mauritius never owned Chagos. It was never part of their constitutional makeup. And Mauritius got its independence, I can't remember exactly when, and it went off and it did whatever it does, including sizing up the Chinese. And we kept Chagos as part of our British Indian Overseas Territories. And there is no case at all for Mauritius to have a claim to Chagos. And it's only because of a UN resolution, another international, supranational entity that is ruled, for reasons that are not clear to me, that Chagos should be handed back to Mauritius, that this ever entered public debate. So the question that I've got for the Prime Minister, and indeed lots of parliamentarians who seem not to care about the United Kingdom, is why do you take the knee to the UN when we know from our own history, a glance at our history books, that this is British. It's British through and through. It's been...
And that would lead people like you and me to absolutely have a right to say that this government is anti-British, it's globalist, and it looks to Europe and the rest of the world. And somebody said something to me this morning, actually, Ben, which I was going to put to you, which is how ironic, isn't it? When you think what's happening in America, despite what the lefties might say, when you think that finally that wet liberal Trudeau is going to be scuttled out going in Canada, when you look at how the right wing have taken over all of Europe, I was going to say we're like a beacon. No, we're like a bed sore in the middle of somebody's backside. But I tell you, I want to take a call because I want to take you on this if I can very quickly. This is Jeffrey in Essex talking about the Chagos Islands. Jeffrey, couple of minutes. Ben Habib with me. What you got?
Well, you're covering most of the points I was going to make. Honestly, this Chagos deal has made me so angry since we ever first knew it. What idiot is going to give an asset away, which is what we own, and then suddenly pay him $9 billion? I mean, I can't keep up with all the numbers, really, but what's up with this man? He's a complete bloody idiot. Honestly, he couldn't organise a piss up in the brewery, honestly.
Benjamin, another real big fan of Sir Keir Starmer, but that's what the public think. Why are you giving away, and why are you... Here's the bigger thing for me. You know, when we were talking last week, we were talking about how we still give away nearly £14 billion in foreign aid, and literally 4.5% of that would cover the pensioners keeping warm. And I fail to understand why we seem to give train drivers massive rises, where we seem to wipe the backside of people who don't really need it, and he's happy and he's willing to screw people who really do so many good things for this country.
50 million quid the other week to Tahrir al-Sham, the terrorist group that's just taken over Syria. 11.5 billion to foreign climate change projects. Billions to Ukraine. billions wherever he wants to scattergun them for his ideological aims, but never for the British interest.
The green climate agenda, foreign aid, the Chos Islands, Mauritius, as you said, but not Beryl in Rochdale, who will freeze to death because she can't afford to heat herself. Not Dave, who's worked 50 years and can't get a doctor's appointment. Oh, no. But she can come in on a boat and go to a hotel and get a private GP. I was at a point for a long time where I thought this is going to go. This is not going to go anywhere. This is getting more frustrating and more annoying for not right-wing fanatics, just normal people every day, Ben. Really is.
But I think there's one really big hope, and that is what's happening in the US at the moment. Trump hasn't even taken office yet, and already we're seeing people changing their direction. Dramatic changes have taken place in the US. People like Zuckerberg have removed what they call checks on, you know, what people say on Facebook. Bezos is sidling up to Trump. The woke agenda in the United States, ESG, the climate change stuff, all of that is now being set aside. And if the US takes that direction, as it clearly seems to be taking, even before Trump's taken office, we have to take that direction. Otherwise, economically, we will be wiped out. Now, and there'll also be lots of pressure. We're seeing that pressure from Musk, you know, on X, which is great, but we're going to see pressure from Trump himself. We're going to see an insistence, for example, that we increase our defense spending so that we go up to 5% of GDP. Great. We should do it. He should use NATO actually to drive other agendas. NATO membership and the protection of the United States should only be given to us if we enforce our borders, for example. That's a requirement I would make if I were in Trump's office. You start protecting your borders. Stop letting in mostly young men of fighting age coming into the country illegally. There's so many things I think that are going to happen, Jeremy, over the next 4 years. And I hope Trump stays true to that agenda and forces through bilateral relations with the United Kingdom a requirement that Starmer does exactly the same. We've got to ditch these sets of policies, this direction of travel that's so anti-British, that puts the liberal global elite over and above and to the detriment of the domestic sovereign needs of the United Kingdom.
Couldn't agree more, mate. You know it's always a pleasure to have you. Just one final quick question. You'll love this, Ben. The BBC has sparked criticism today for hiring a new boss as its world news operation, who previously instructed journalists in Canada not to call him mass terrorists. George Aki has recently been announced as head of editorial quality and compliance at the BBC World Service. They don't bloody get it either, do they?
No, hopefully they'll get it in the neck pretty soon too.
Unbelievable. Benjamin Habib, I don't even know if it's called Benjamin. Thank you very much, Steve.